Yeah, we're live. Woohoo! Alright, let's see if this one is working. Let's see if we have sound. Let's go and see if we have sound. Oh, why is he doing that? You gotta really look at my own commercial. How funny is that? Why am I not hearing? Okay, it looks like I've got sound, so that's good. Alrighty. Alright, so let's tell everybody we're live. Okay. Alrighty, cool. I'm just going to go and leave this one off. Actually, I'll take that off in a bit. Hey, Tech Dive. Alrighty. Here we go. Let's turn that down. Alright, I'm just gonna wait until there's a few more people in before we're gonna start talking about what we're gonna be doing today. First of all, I've got a working camera. My little capture device came in, which is really cool. Oh, there's a lot of delay in here. That's very annoying. Oh, thanks, Tech Dive. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got about, I think I've got a full minute of delay on here. I'm looking at myself just talking about my camera. So yeah, I bought a $30 Australian capture card, an HDMI capture card, and it does full 1080p at 30 FPS, and it does 720p at 60 FPS, which is great for my camera. You know, I've got my Elgato HD capturing fully at 60 frames per second what we're seeing on screen, which is really cool. But yeah, very happy with the fact that this is working. So I'm using a camcorder at the moment. This is one that I happen to have. Bought that years ago. Never thought I was going to use that for my streaming. But yeah, that is it. So the other thing, for those who are watching this on the recap, so I'm working on my latest tutorial video. That one, I did a little, what you call it, I did a little teaser for that the other day. That's my lighting isn't very good in my room yet, so whenever my monitor suddenly lights up, the camera is having a little bit of a problem with the light balance. It's a bit annoying, but that's what I get for streaming in the middle of the night. What do you do? Okay, so yeah, no, I created that little teaser that I posted the other day, and I'm getting commercials in here. That's not cool. Come on. You would think that YouTube would remove the commercials if you're looking at your own videos. Anyway, so this is this tutorial I'm working on right now. I'm nearly done. I'm in the last stages of editing, but I needed a break. I need to do something else. So tonight we're going to do a live stream with something completely different. Let me just close that again. And whoa, I just nudged my camera, which was not what I had in mind. I got this little thing in. My new little Logitech joystick. So that's a joystick for flight sims. which I've been wanting to get back into for a while. We wanted to play some Elite Dangerous again, which I used to play a long time ago, so I might get back into that. Some other games that I want to play, but I figured might as well have some fun with that in Godot. And as you can see on my screen, I'm working on some little environment to play around with that. And tonight we're just going to have a look at starting this up and seeing if we can get something that will fly around. And we'll see where we take it. This might be a once-off thing, and after this it'll just be whatever it is. Or I might continue on this. We'll see how it goes. One downside though is the assets that I'm using are assets that I bought off of an asset store, so I can't share them. So I'm not going to be sharing this project. I'm also not turning this project in a tutorial. Even though there's a lot of fun things that we're going to be looking at if I continue this. And you know, as such, I'll keep this on my my YouTube channel as you know, streams that we save. In many ways, it's far more simplistic than what we're doing, for instance, with the weapons tutorial and the object interaction tutorials and that sort of thing. So I don't really think this is, you know, the best way to do. Yeah, this is not. I think this is not our best way to use this sort of stuff. So, and the tutorials, right? We're just gonna have some fun. Anyway, so what have I done so far? I've just done a setup project. I just started with this about 2 or 3 hours ago, and it's basically the basic setup that we've used for our background loading tutorial, and then what I applied in my previous live stream to the weapons environment. So we have a main scene that is setting everything up, that has all the logic for loading new stuff in and switching between, you know, loaded scenes and that sort of thing, and has our player information in there. But as we can see, the player is a lot simpler. We don't have, you know, we're not going to track our hands. We're going to be using our joystick. And yes, this is going to be a VR game. Although everything that I'm building here, everything that we're doing tonight, if you want to do that just for desktop, it's exactly the same. The only difference really is that instead of having a camera that is controlled by a headset, you just have a fixed camera looking out of your cockpit. So it's actually simpler in in that way. So all right. So right now we just have this this setup that is the same as, you know, what we did with the weapons tutorial, and I'm just loading in this little start scene, which is this little scene that I'm working on here. Let's go back to 3D, and all that I've got in here right now is this big space carrier, one of the assets that I bought. It's completely empty. There's nothing inside. But it gives us something to look at. It gives us this nice little starting point, because once we fly outside, we have to have something for reference. Eventually, we'll dress it up. We get some asteroids in there. We get some other things. Eventually, we'll look at, you know, getting enemies and that sort of thing. That's way further down the line. We're only just starting. Just noticed that my environment for some reason has become empty. There we go. Back to my default environment. So let's run this real quick. I'm actually going to take my headset off because I don't need that anymore. That was just to check if my volume was working, and hopefully that'll keep on working. Sorry, my chair is really squeaky. It's a bit annoying. But yeah, we load this in, and I can just look around. I'm just standing in the middle of this carrier, and you know, one of the things that is always really cool, and one of the reasons why I like doing something like this as a start scene, is you just get this sense of scale in VR. You just don't get that in reality. So right now I'm just standing somewhere in the middle of this thing. Eventually, the idea I have is that this is sort of like your setup or loading or something, where you select your plane that you want to use or something like that. Yeah, for our starters right now, it's just going to be our staging point. We're not gonna be doing anything like scene switching or anything like that tonight. So obviously, what we need to do next is we actually need to create our actual player. Now this is where it gets a little bit strange or different to what we've been doing before, especially because I do want to make it possible for us to load in different fighter models eventually and that sort of jazz. We suddenly run into a problem that our player is already defined in our root node. While I'm actually going to be inside of a vehicle, I'm going to be inside of a plane. So I have a very nice, ingenious solution for that in a minute. For now, we're just going to pretend that we're not in VR, that we're building a normal space sim game. And the way that we start with that, and I'm just going to zoom in where we are, just so that we start somewhere, is a rigid body. We're not going to use a vehicle body because that is specifically meant for cars. See my cars tutorial. We're going to use a standard rigid body. So we're going to let the Godot physics engine take care of everything that we need it to do. That reminds me, I haven't actually set up anything in my physics layer, so these are going to be just the standard ones, and we don't need any of that. So I'm just going to take it out. I'm actually not going to be worrying about physics layers at this point in time, so everything is going to remain in physics layer 1. We've got our carrier actually currently in physics layer 1, so there's a few little shapes there that we can use. So we're going to put our rigid body in here. Now, one of the things, of course, is we are in space. Very heavy. Which means we don't actually have a gravity. So can we just scale it to 0? I'm not sure. Yeah, we can set it 0. So obviously we want our gravity to be turned off. Let's also move our rigid body into place. Now, I'm not quite sure where it is because we don't have a plane right now, which is a bit annoying. We're going to be adding a cockpit in a minute, so I do have a cockpit that we're going to be using, but I really wish that we had a complete plane attached to it, and that's something that I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to see if I can find an asset that's both has a complete internal cockpit but does have the outside of the plane as well. So that's going to be for another time, but I'm using an asset that I bought a little while ago, and that I really enjoyed. This is by a guy called Sean. I forgot his last name. I'll look it up and I'll put it into the description once this video is up. I'll actually put a link to both of the assets that I'm using in the description when I'm done. But he makes some really cool things, and he's actually part of a team that made a Wing Commander type game called SDF Starfighter. I think you can find it on Steam, and there is a VR version of that, which is considering it's, I think, made by a small indie studio. It's a really nice title. I might actually, now that I've got my joystick, I might actually play it and maybe stream some gameplay at some point or something like that. Hey, Sex-Ups, how you going? We are going, because I'm taking a bit of a break from my my editing of my VR weapons tutorial. I've been well, pretty much busy with it almost every night. I'm almost done. Hopefully released on Sunday or Monday at the latest. But I needed a break, so I'm going to be doing something else tonight. I'm going to build the start of a space flight sim. Why am I looking over there? That's where my my streaming computer is. So if you see me looking to the side, I'm looking at my chat. Sorry. All right. So we got a rigid body. We're using a rigid body because Godot will now handle all the movement of this rigid body. It will handle, you know, everything around that. So that's going to be the base of our plane. And obviously we want to have our cockpit in place. So we're going to join our cockpit in there. So this is going to be our cockpit. And I had that already selected here. So boom. Boom, boom. All right, so that's not oriented the right way, I think. Or maybe that will turn out to be forward. I'm not sure, actually. Well, I guess that it doesn't really matter. Is transform. That's X. Now I think I'm going to want to rotate this one the other way around. That was 90. So we're going to make it that facing forward on the Z-axis is going forward. That's something that we're going to be looking at. So this thing's pretty dark at the moment because there's no light inside. So that's something that we need to change up. We do have some lighting from the scene around us at the moment. And I'm going to leave that centered on our rigid body. There is an argument to move that forward and have the turning or the center, the center of mass of our plane more behind us. And I may do that eventually, but my experience so far is that this is more comfortable for the player because you don't move in a way that you don't expect. Hi, Master Ox, welcome. Thanks for joining. We are building, or just starting building a little space flight sim game in VR. We'll see how far we get in an hour or two. But I figured it would be a nice thing to try and build and see if we can get a start in. So we're going to be sitting inside of here, which is right now very dark. So I think we need a little cockpit light for that. We need to fix up a few things in our cockpit as well. Let's go this. So these are all the materials that are loaded in, but there are a lot of materials that don't actually get. Some of the things don't carry over into Godot, which is a bit of an annoyance. But one that we do want to set up right now is our glass. Now we can't set it up in our object itself. I'm loading in is it Wavefront? I think Wavefront object files. And if you change the materials of those, it'll override them next time that you load them in. So last time when we were working on our weapons tutorial, we were loading all the stuff from Kenyon and we were using GLTF files, and GLTF files result in the materials being saved in separate files, which means you can edit those files because you have a setting to tell Godot don't overwrite them on a re-import. When you look at Wavefront OBJ files, we don't have that. Every time that the OBJ file is re-imported, we overwrite our material settings. So that's something that we never do. Sociamix, hello, how are you? So what I tend to do to make sure that that sort of stuff doesn't happen is that I leave all of this alone, and we'll see that we're going to be having some fun with the screens as well in a little bit. I'll probably tonight just load in the default texture that Sean provides, but we'll eventually look at actually using those screens. So for now, the glass, I want to change the glass. So that's service 10, which is interestingly enough, because we're counting from 0 here, we're counting from 1 here. So our service material is actually material number 9. So I'm just going to create a new one. You can immediately see that our glass changes. I'm going to change the properties. I'm going to make that transparent. And I'm going to make that maybe a little very dark green. And we're going to make that transparent. And the other thing that I might want to do, hold on, let's see if we make that a bit more like this. They are single-sided. So we are going to turn off our cull mode. And that means that both the inside of the glass and the outside of the glass are rendered, and we can have some fun with that eventually. So yeah, all right, let's also add in a cockpit light. So we're gonna go and do just a omni light is good enough for what we want to do. I actually want to go and put it there. Not sure why it didn't do that right away, so let's move that where we need it. And we're just going to move that up over here maybe, just so that we have some lighting inside our cockpit. Doesn't have to be precise, it's just so that we have light in here. I don't know why the the textures became so yellow. So that's something that we need to look at in a minute as well, because I don't think it's supposed to be that. Let's make this. I don't think it has to be that much more than that. It's good enough for now. Okay. Yeah, let's have a look at why those colors don't seem to be the way that they are. And I think I have a suspicion that if we look at our material cockpit, we probably have a default color here. No, that's not it either. I think it's had problems importing those textures. So which texture are we using here? That's our interceptor cockpit base color TGA. Is that one? So do we re-import that? Actually, let's have a look at the original file over here. Original JPEG files, okay. So that is this one. It always hangs a bit when you re-import things, so I just have to be a little bit patient. Let's see, can I open this with more apps? Krita. Let's see what Krita makes out of this, because maybe it's just having some problems with the colors themselves. Well, that looks way better color-wise. That's a really weird map, though. No, it actually looks really weird. Well, that might just be the way that that's painted, because that's probably painted on. But it's not all yellowy and stuff, so... Well, one thing that we can do is let's open that one more time with Krita. And I might do that with the other ones as well. And we're just going to save them as PNGs. That makes here we go, PNG. So I'm just going to go and save that. I'll leave that open for now. That's going to be re-importing again. And that gives us a good moment to recreate this as a new material as well. So again, we will lose those. So we'll go and create a new material here, spatial material, and then we just load in assets, shown, interceptor textures, and we had our base color.png. That looks much better. That is what I wanted color-wise. Ooh. All right. Now I'm using the Glass 2 driver, so I'm not quite sure how much we can use of all the extra PBR materials, but we'll load them in anyway and see if that makes any improvement. So I don't care about that anymore, but I do want to. Oh. This is the one thing that is a bit of a problem in Godot 3. So when it re-imports textures, it hangs everything. So we're going to go and load in our metalness texture. Oh, it's actually set up for Krita right away now. That's the other problem that I always have with Krita. It only opens it up the first time. Alright, so let's do the same thing. Exports, we'll turn that into a PNG. There we go. So that was the metalness one, I think. So we're gonna make, oops. We need to put that all the way to 1, else our metalness won't work. Textures and that one. Let's do the same thing for the roughness map, and then we'll leave it alone. But I'll probably tweak this a little bit more later on, because we can make it look really nice that way. Let's open that one. Okay. Pretty sure this has been drawn onto the 3D model in some sort of 3D model painter. Looking at how it's put together. Mind you, I am not a 3D artist, so at least not a very good one. Made one or two things, not very good. Anyway, we're about done with this. This always just takes way too long. But once it's done, it's done. We don't have to worry about it anymore. So let's load that in. And that was the roughness one. So that's our TGA one. That's our PNG one. Oh, we got a normal map. But that one we can use the way that it is. So we'll bring that one in as well. I don't think there's a whole lot of detail in the normal map. And then we're going to see if we can make this thing fly. Come on. Today. Alright, and then just sort of find the normal map, and then we're done. I think this one should be okay, because this one should already have been imported, so hopefully it's smart enough to know it doesn't have that. It still re-imports it. That is actually really strange, because that should already have been applied in the original one. I'm very tempted to do it for the outside as well, but we'll do that after the stream is finished. And then if we keep continuing with this, which I'm actually thinking about this. I'm thinking about doing this as a fixed Friday night thing, and just work on this little project alongside of all the tutorials that I do, and you'll see if we can slowly build a mini space fighter game or something like that. See how far we can take it. Alrighty, there we go. So I don't really want to play with those materials very much more. There we go. So we can look the inside of our cockpit, which now actually looks proper. We'll do one display just so that everybody can see what's going on there. The big question is, which screen is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a really quick way of checking that. That's that screen over there. So we're clear. Let's create this one. So whichever one turns white is the screen that is handled by that thing. Now, obviously, we're eventually going to. So that's that one. We're eventually going to change these screens and hang them or connect them to a what you call it, a viewport, so that we can actually render something on the screen. I'm just trying to find the center one. That one. So that one we'll set up properly. And this is a little bit differently. We're going to actually set this as an albedo texture. I'm going to load that in. And which one is our center one? Is that the screen radar? Might have been. Let's have a look, because we now know that it's number 4. That means that it's actually material 5. And here it's set up as the Albedo Texture. Yeah, see, that's the radar thing. But you can see that there's no emission setup here, which means that it's normally lit. But of course, an LCD screen, actually emits light. So we're actually going to set that up as an emission. And we're going to go and select that radar screen. And we need to go. And this is because it mixes with that. So we actually don't want an albedo light. Okay, now I'm getting confused. Color texture. Why is it not using my texture here? Well, the other thing that we could do. That's really weird. That should have worked. Well, the other thing that we can do to really is just leave it unshaded. That's interesting. How is it lighter if it's not shaded? That's actually really weird. No. Maybe that's something weird in the Glass 2 driver. I'm not complaining. That must be because that light is actually pretty strong shining on it. Interesting. Well, we have a display. That's really all I care about at this point in time. Am I going to make the game multiplayer? Maybe. That's actually not a bad idea. Make it a little multiplayer dogfighting game. First want to get it to work single player. But yeah, that's Godot has a really nice little built-in multiplayer function. So might be something worth investigating once we got this thing working a little bit. So we have our cockpit available, lighted. I'm now going to go and I'm going to rename this to Interceptor, and we're going to go and save that as its own scene. I'm going to put that in a carrier. I'm going to create a new planes. Interceptor. There we go. So we save that in there. Okay. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on editable children. And now first, I'm going to go and put a spatial in here. All right. And we're going to put that roughly where our head is supposed to be. Now, in VR, we're having our headset on. We can move around. So, you know, we can actually walk outside of our spaceship, which is going to be... Yeah, emissions. I had emissions turned on, so I'm not quite sure why that wasn't working. So yeah, so I could basically leave the spaceship and walk around. Or, you know, one of the problems that we have is we could actually be somewhere very different. You know, the center of my room is somewhere behind me. I'm sitting much more forward. So OpenVR will tell me that I'm sitting, you know, basically somewhere over here if we make that the center of our VR world. Now, there's two parts to that. The first is, I actually need to go in my player script. In the background loading tutorial and in the weapons tutorial, we have a function here that will reposition the player, and we'll look at the difference between the origin point and our camera, and we will do an inverse of that, and we make sure that we place our origin point in such a way that our player is above the nominated point that we have in the right orientation. Here we're going one step further. We're going to completely zero that out. Now I could do that in code, so we could move the AR/VR origin point in a place relative to our starting point to make that happen. But instead of doing that, I'm actually telling the AR/VR server to do that. There is a function called center on HMD, and all that does is it takes the current position of my headset, and then it will move the AR/VR origin point in such a way, or it actually doesn't move the point itself. It adds an internal transform for this, so that if I put my origin point here, my camera will be right on that origin point. Now from that moment onwards, I can move around again, and I will move around in relation to that origin point. But at the moment that this is called, I will set that up. Now, two things are important. One is that first parameter, reset but keep tilt. That means that it resets the heading, so I'm going to be looking in the direction that I've set my transform to be, but it's going to negate whether I'm looking up or down. So if I'm looking up, all of a sudden that's going to be forward. Now it's going to make sure that it remembers that. The second parameter that it has, this is normally true. This tosses away the height. So if I leave that as true, then my origin point will remain on the floor, and my headset will remain whatever height I'm standing. If I turn this to false, my origin point will be absolutely dead center on the headset. And that is what we want in a space sim. That's what we want in a space sim. That's what we want on, if you do a car simulator. So like my old vehicles tutorial, I called this function as well to reset it. But there is, of course, the moment that this starts, this gets called. So the moment that we load our scene, this gets called. But I can move from that moment forward. So we will need to do something where we can manually reset, and we need to do something that if the player moves too far away from our center point, from where we want the player to be, we need to make sure that the system reacts either by fading to black or doing something, or pausing the game, making sure that works. For now, I'm just going to leave it at there and not worry too much about it. Now, obviously, I've got my headset lying slightly over here, so I need to make sure that I have it in my hands when I start the game. We might eventually hook up one of the buttons on the controller for that. So that is important to know. So because of the fact that I'm calling this when my scene loads, my headset will become the center of the world. So when we look at our player scene, here's our AR/VR origin point, here's our camera. Those will be lined up. They will not be away. And again, after that I can move away from it, but that's where we start. And that is why this is going to work. Now, in our interceptor, we now have our spatial. So this is going to be our head position. And we now want our AR/VR origin point to be in that location. But the problem that we have is it's in our construct here. So what I already did in our start scene is I created this this node called player position, and this is a node that is called a remote transform. And a remote transform, what that does is whenever it's repositioned, it will then copy its new position to whatever node you assign here. So right now there is no node assigned, but we're going to go and move that and make that now a child. That's not smart. Let's reopen that because we renamed it. So let's go and save that first and find our scene again. Come on. Note that that now is renamed. It has to be the right name or else it won't save properly. So we're going to child our remote transform to our head position. So we have our interceptor being, our plane being a rigid body. Godot will move that. The physics engine will move that around depending on our inputs, which we will write in a minute. Our head position is a child of that, so that moves along with it. Our remote transform is a child of that, so that moves along with it. And that is now going to send its position to the player. And that last bit we do in code. So we have our init world function that we've implemented on our base world that gets called when our scene gets loaded in. We first call our normal logic there. And here we assign the remote path to our player position. The only thing is we've now moved that. So we obviously need to get the right path. That is now going to link our player's position to that position. And that means that when our game now starts, we should be, hopefully, inside of our cockpit. And we are not. I don't even see our cockpit. What is going on? It's all the way over there. Well, so far... Oh, ha! Sorry. This is what you get when you drag nodes around. that is still over there, because that was where it was before I moved it. I of course need to go and reset this transform. Now we're inside. Okay, now I am indeed inside my cockpit, but yeah, I'm the wrong way around. Now that is easy to solve. We go back into our interceptor, and we are going to, not that one, we are going to turn our head 180 degrees. And there we go. Now, the next problem that we have is I'm a dwarf, hopefully, because I don't fit in my cockpit. I made it too small. But here you can see, by the way, because I'm moving my controller, we can go outside of our plane. We'll deal with that later. All right. So let's go back to our interceptor. That's the one that we're loading. Let's just make it twice as big. Re-import. There we go. Oh, that's not good. That is really weird. That makes me very unhappy, because it's reset my materials here as well. Hasn't just reloaded the mesh, it has actually reset all our materials. Now, luckily we've done this one time already, so we can just really quickly do this again. We're going to go and set our glass up. And this time, this doesn't really matter. There we go, and that was culling disabled. We want that to work on the inside as well. Then we have our first material is our inside. Boom. Oh, before I forget, save. Because it does save this as a as information in our local scene, or in our interceptor scene, but because I actually removed and reassigned the mesh, that's basically what happens when you click on re-import. The moment that the mesh is removed, the services aren't there anymore, and all our links go away. So this is really a problem when we reassign a mesh. Really should spend some time actually changing the import of wave front files to work the same way as GLTF works. Okay, so finish most of my boring work, which piece. But what are your thoughts on Rust for game development, maybe to replace C++ someday? I actually use Rust in my at work in my day for my day job, not for game development, unfortunately. I don't know. I don't know if there really is. If you have an existing game engine like Godot, which is completely built in C++, I don't really think there's a point in rewriting the whole thing in Rust. I don't think there's enough of a benefit to it. But it is a really nice language. There are some really nice sides to it. But whether I would use it for game development, I'm not sure, to be honest. My experience with it is that that is pretty nice. It does apply that really nicely. My experience is just a little bit, that it can be a little bit too tricky to do certain things that are just much simpler in C++. But I think that has a lot to do with, I've been writing C++ for 30 years, 25 years, something like that. And I've done 1 year of Rust. So maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, when I've done a lot more with it, I might go like, yeah, this is really what you want to be building these sort of things in. I do think that if you want to move away from C++, if you want to use something more modern with all the advantages of some of the new things that are applied to compilers, and the Rust compiler is really neat. You know, the way that it guides you when you make a mistake and it says like, hey, you're not supposed to do this. You might want to try and do this. It almost teaches you how to code. It's that part of it I really, really enjoy about using Rust. But yeah, I guess I'm just too familiar with C++ at the moment, and that would make me stick with C++. Okay, I did not model or texture this, unfortunately. I'm not that good as far as modeling is concerned. I'm a programmer. I know my way around Blender a little bit. This is an asset made by a guy called Sean, and like in the beginning of the stream, I forgot his last name. I think it's Sean Williams, but I could be wrong. But he's one of the artists who works on a game called SDF Starfighter, which is a game you can download on Steam. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually one of the game assets from that game that he has made available through CG Trader. So I got this off of CG Trader. But yeah, check that game out. It's a really nice game. Like I said in the beginning, I might, now that I've got my new joystick, I might start playing a bit and maybe stream it a little bit, if only just to get some ideas about the sort of things that we could do. Didn't I already save this? Yeah, that's all. All right. So which one was I sent? I think that was 4, wasn't it? That it was. Okay, let's just try this one more time, because this should work as an emission map, and I just don't get why it didn't. Notice, by the way, because we imported all the files before, it is actually no longer taking half an hour to do. So yeah, I don't get it. It's multiply. Yeah. Well, if multiply, then this needs to be white. So now I don't know why it's not working as an emission. It should. I think it's a Glass 2 thing, because I originally built an earlier version of this, but using the Glass 3 driver, and that was the way that I got the screens to all work. So I'm only doing the center screen. I'm not going to do all the other screens. We might do that in some point. Now, obviously, because we made this thing much bigger, our head position is going to be in the wrong space. So we're just going to move that somewhat over there, and the same with our light. Our light will be in the wrong space. I'm actually going to move that over here. It's like the little light on the top here. Let's pretend that is the light that's actually illuminating the cockpit. Okie dokie. So let's try that again and see if we're not dwarfs anymore. The little Charles. Alright. Now that's really interesting. Why would that might just be because I started it at the wrong point. Hold on. Just want to make sure it's not because we resized everything and didn't do something in our starting scene. No, we didn't. Okay, so let's make sure that we actually have our headset near our eyes, because I probably just put it outside the cockpit. There we go. And our colors are still all screwed up. That's really interesting. Alright, so why are our colors screwed up in here? Alright. I'm wondering if it does re-import it the moment that you restart the scene. So let's go and close everything off. Luckily we did save everything in material files this time, so if it keeps screwing up, we know how to reload it. Now that is the way that it should be. So oh yeah, well, it is definitely resetting our materials, which is really weird. They're still all there. All right. Do I have... That just means that we have all the things in there, and that's a high poly version. So why did that work before? Why is that all of a sudden we're doing that wrong? Well, one thing that we could always do as an overrule where did we save those? Planes is a cockpit, yes. Okay. Load. Oh, I know now. There we go. All right. I said in the beginning that I wasn't going to do it this way, but I am going to override it over there. And I'm going to do the same thing with my glass. Load. And then we can clear it over here. Because I think the fact that we've got both the original materials loaded and the new ones, I think that it might be giving a problem with that. And now what we just did, if we look at the files behind the scenes, where are we? No, that's the wrong one. Where are we? Scenes, planes, interceptor. So what you can see here is that it's not loading our materials in. That's really weird. Because when you overwrite these, now it changes mode. No, so it doesn't do that. Yeah, so they have to be loaded in the, they have to be loaded here. So why are they screwing up? Okay. Because now we can see, oh, don't save. That's what you get when you save something while you've got it open at the same time. So now we can see that it's loading our material files in, and it's actually applying those as our external resources on our material, which is the reason why it keeps reloading those. And that of course also means that we need to go and save this one. Save. That's going to be center console. All right, so let's see if with rejigging this, we need to go and implement that button soon. No, it still screwed up the turn it on the screen. Oh, let's first figure out why our materials are suddenly not working, because we had it working in the beginning. That's really weird. 13. Right. Oh, look at that. So maybe something went wrong here. So let's go and re-import this guy. Interceptor. There we go. That's interesting. Is that happens to be our... Oh, it's remembered our position. That's really interesting. So, of course, not smart enough to leave that in. So, what did we call that? Player position. There we go. Right. So, I'm just going to make sure that, because I think our problem with centering is that our position isn't seen by my sensors when we start the game. So we are going to implement that button. Look at that. There we go. Okay, so the other thing that we still need to do, but we'll do that later, is we're missing our controls here. Now, I also don't like how far back I am. I'm wondering if I should be sitting a little bit more forward in our cockpit. Because, yeah, the size looks good now. That's the most important thing. It actually looks like the size of our cockpit is good. All right. So let's do that first. We do that in our interceptor scene itself. Position, move forward a bit. So obviously something was stuck in our original scene, in our starting scene, because we began with putting everything in there and then saved it as a subscene, as a branch. Save the branch as subscene. So I'm guessing that something... Sorry, I've got some phones making some noises here. Boom, let's turn that thing off. So I'm guessing something got stuck that way and undid some of our changes. So I'm glad that it is actually working. Let's go and create a script on our interceptor. And I actually don't want to create it there. I want to create it here. And I'm going to call that plane. Probably a bad name for it, but this way we can make a script that we could reuse on other fighters as well, and we don't have to re-implement all the code every time again. So, all right. There we go. Now, it's been a while since I last did this. So obviously we now want to start getting some controller input from our joystick and have that drive our spaceplane. And the way we're going to do that, as far as thrust is concerned, we're actually going to apply a force onto our plane. So let's start with that. Now, a good question is, should we be implementing that in our physics process or in our... We're going to do that in our physics process. That makes more sense to me. Now, one thing that I actually haven't played around with yet is in our input map. So we got all our basic inputs. We're actually not going to be using those. We're going to create a new action called throttle. And we're going to go and put a joystick axis in. And now we actually need to find out which joystick axis that is. That's a good one. Where's my little doohickey? Actually, no, there is a... let's try that first. Let's try that first. Do I have that already? I might not. GitHub. Go engine. Runtime, oh, 11 o'clock, halfway. Okay. Demo projects. I think that is the one that I'm looking for. All right. Put them in here. Actually, no, I'll put it straight in here. Git clone demo projects. Okay. Now I've got a second copy of Godot that I can start on the desktop, I think. Nope, where did I put it? This PC thing. I thought I put it on the desktop. Oh, I did. I'm just looking over it. All right. Is that downloaded yet? No, it's still downloading. Let's wait for that for a second. Thanks for visiting, Derek. Have a good day at work. All right, that's in. So the reason I'm downloading that is someone a long time ago created a project in the demo projects, and it'll be a MISC. I think it's this one. Yes, it is. All right. That's finding our Logitech. Okay. So forward and backwards is axis 0, left, right. No, that's 0. Axis 1 is forward backwards. Axis 2 is turn. You guys can't see what I'm doing with my joystick, but I am not getting. Well, that might not be in this list because we have more than 10 axes. So we need to find out which one is that. Okay. Let's see. Joy Max. What is joy axes? We only have 10 joystick axes. All right. That's not good. unless no, we only have that one. So do I need to map that in? So we got a slider, it is working. So why is Godot not seeing that? Because it's seeing all these. It's more than happy with that. Seeing these guys. Button 0, button 1, so 0 is fire. But it's not seeing my my thrust vector. All right, that sucks. All right, I'll need to research that a little bit more because obviously I want to use that. So cool. Also making a flight game. They are a lot of fun to do. So hopefully you'll find some useful things in this once we get this to work. I guess we're going to start with. I need to find out why my thrust sensor isn't working, or why Godot doesn't see that one. Might just be a mapping issue. So we go all the way to 10. Yeah, we don't have the bottom ones, so that's really weird. Okay. So let's leave that out for now. Okay. Let's see if we can start with doing that with something else. Then actually, I do need the action for that. So yeah, we're just gonna do something really weird, just to make it work. We're going to go and just make that react in the space key, just so that we can at least move forward. So we're going to do simply if action inputs throttle. So if that is pressed, we are going to apply an impulse. We're going to apply that on the center of our object for now. And now we need to have transform dot basis dot z. That might go backwards, we will see. And obviously we want that with a factor, so export var thrust factor. And we're just going to leave that at 1. We might go moving really fast or really slow, I'm not quite sure. Let's just see if at least, we're probably not going to be inside of our thing. There we are. Oh. Okay, the other thing that we're first going to do, I closed the other app too quickly. That wasn't smart of me. Dirt pads again. Run. Alright, I'm going to hook that up to button 7 just for now. Let's leave that running in the background if we need it. So we're going to do that with an action as well. Action is reset. Set position. And we're just going to put that on button 7 for now, just so that we have that working. And in this case, that actually I want to put in my process function. If input action just press, because we only want to react once. And for here, we don't have that on here, so we're going to emit a signal. So we're going to set a signal up here. Set position. Okay, and then over here we're going to do emit signal reset headset position, which means that I can now hook that up over here. There we go. Node reset. Whoops. Connect to our start scene, and that just means that we can call that one again. And that means that if I'm outside my, so we're going to make sure that goes wrong. So we're outside of our thing, and now we're inside. Perfect. And now, if I press space, nothing happens. Okay. So, is our thrust factor too little? Let's try that out first. Or are we just not working? Which is both possible. Okay. So, maybe I'll just leave that standing still, because I actually don't have to grab that all the time. I don't actually have to wear it. So now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this in my physics process is that is always called at a fixed frequency. So if we apply an impulse like this, we get a fixed impulse. Now, first of all, let's see if I've mixed up my apply impulse. Position impulse. Maybe I should just do the apply center impulse anyway. That's probably a good idea too. Basically, that should do exactly the same as what we did here with just having our vector initialized as an empty vector. Test. And I just want to see, is our throttle actually, our action actually coming in? No, our action isn't happening. Okay. Why is our action not happening? because that's not action pressed, that's action pressed. Action is pressed. There we go. I think action pressed. No, it's not. What am I doing wrong here? Or is it? Is action pressed? That's it. So action pressed, the function that I was calling, is actually emitting the action. That was a little. Yeah, the VR headsets are a lot of fun. Absolutely. Okay. We've got liftoff. So, now one thing that's important to note is we don't have a way to slow down yet. And we're not slowing down. There's no drag because we're in space. We haven't implemented any drag. We might do that even though there is no drag in space for arcade feel type of games. It's actually probably a good idea to have some drag implemented. But not to begin with. So I'm actually going to make this a little bit lower for now, even though that was very fun that we just shot out of the thing. Let's see if we can get some control working on our joystick to actually rotate. So left, right, say jaw is x is 0. So let's start with x is 0. 1 is that. Okay. Now again, the question is, do we do that in a physics process or do we do that in that? Let's do that in physics process. And for now, we just do it very direct, as a very direct input. But I think one of the things that is always a good idea here is to to implement some sort of inertia in rolling. But we're going to start with it really, really simply. So var t is no, that's our local transform we're going to do this on. So I'm going to store a copy of our transform because we're going to be changing it. But I kind of like doing it that way. So let's go and have a look at our transform. Boom. And I want to rotate it around each axis. So we can get a new, so it's actually on a basis. Actually, let's have a look at our basis. Does that have a better set of functions for this? Oh, let's just rotate it. Okay. So we're going to be doing that on our basis. Okay, so actually, because we only need to do things with our basis, which is our rotation matrix. So we're going to go with changing that. And at the end, once we're done changing it, we're going to update our changed version. But the other thing that I want to do is orthonormalize. And that's to make sure that whenever you rotate a transform, there's always small rounding issues that we get. And by calling orthonormalized on it, we counter that rounding it. Make sure that all the vectors of our bases are all nicely normalized and at 90-degree angles of each other. So we're going to start with our x is 0, and that was our left, right. So we're going to roll our plane. All right. So now that we're doing this on our standard transform, are we doing it there? Yeah, we should be able to simply say, sorry, no, b dot is b dot rotated. Why is that not helping me? There we go. Now it's helping me. And we want to rotate that. So this is the roll. That's going to be rotated around the z-axis. Oh, dot z. And the amount that we do that with is then going to be our input get joy axis. So 0 was our, actually I want to make that export var roll axis is 0, so that we can remap those things if we have different joysticks at some point. All right, and we probably need a roll factor. To adjust our speed. Now, I'm not going to be multiplying with delta at this point in time. Because we're doing this in physics process, I know that this is a fixed iteration. Our factor is already going to handle it. Now, if we ever implement something that we change the rate at which our physics engine runs, it does become important to take that into account, else we might roll our craft faster or slower. All right. Are we stuck? We are stuck. Why are we stuck? Because there is a... Why does get joy axis need two variables? Ah, device. Oops. Where are we? So the first parameter is our joystick. Joystick 0, joystick 1, joystick 2. So we actually are going to make that an export variable as well. Export var joy ID is 0. These are all things. You know, we might do split screen at some point in time and have two players in there, each using their own joystick. Who knows? All right. Okay, we are rolling very, very fast. So let's do that a little slower. And the other thing that we want to do is we're actually going to go and get our roll first. Again, the more things that we make configurable, the better we get. So we're going to make sure that we are only applying this if our joystick has enough input, so that if we get a little bit of noise when it stands still, we don't go and shake our plane. The other thing that I want to do is, if we indeed have an input, we set this to true, and we only update this if we actually have a change. So if we don't change our orientation, we don't have any joystick input to do that, we're going to leave it alone. Now, the other thing that I suddenly realized is that we really quickly need to have a collision shape. Completely forgot our collision shape. So we're just going to put a box shape in there, make it a bunch bigger. So this is for basically to simulate our fuselage. There we go. That doesn't need to be precise right now. That'll become interesting if we eventually have a full model of a plane, because obviously, you know, we we want to be able to bump into things. All right, now we're still going way too fast. And that's kind of logical, because when you think about it, full joystick input is +1, say. We're doing that at 90 frames per second, so we are rotating at 19 radians a second. Yeah, that's fast. Okay. Did we simply forget to actually apply our roll factor? Let me guess. First of all, we're getting this twice. We just need to get it one time. There we go. Remove the bracket too many. And of course I have to multiply with the factor that we specified. That was very silly. All right. So yeah, so we can spin around. Now obviously this does not make sense when we're standing on the ground, but because we're not checking collision at this point in time, we're allowed to roll. That's something we're gonna come back to that later. Yeah, so that makes more sense. All right, so let's do the same thing for the other axes. So let's go and do pitch. Same thing, pitch axis, pitch factor. So that's axis number 1. And like I said before, we really need to implement some inertia at some point in time. Pitch, 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 and pitch. Pitch is from, that's on the x-axis. Again, even more dangerous to do inside of a ship. Okay, we're going the wrong way. That needs to be the opposite direction. So turn that around. Oop. We're moving very fast. So we're moving backwards at the moment. Gonna slow down again. Slow down a bit. I think our all right. So now we hit the carrier, because there are some collision shapes on the carrier. And we got into a nice spin. All right. I think that these could do with being a little lower. And again, I think we eventually need to do something with inertia, and we should do something with what you call it? That it, you know, it takes a bit of time to speed up, and it keeps going, and when you let go, it goes back down. But we're keeping it simple tonight. You know, this is just a start. You gotta start somewhere. Your axis, and now your is going to be around y. I hope I got the. I always mix up your and roll, so I hope I haven't got those two the wrong way around. But salary. Yeah. When we look at the fact that we are having this sort of input, we do have more chance at motion sickness. That's very true. Oh, I'm not used to controlling this. It's very fidgety in control. But hey, it's only just a start, so. Yeah, I really don't like the fact that it's so direct. It's very hard to control right now. All right, so let's actually see how motion sick we get. Let's have some fun. Because this is probably easier to control when I'm actually inside and looking at what I'm doing. So this is pretty cool. Yeah, it's very fidgety. Especially because we've made it now. You know, this is basically Oh, that's really weird. Why? Okay, that is really weird. I think because we are updating our transform directly in our physics object, or in our physics process, it's actually all right. Let's see if my suspicions are right, because I think we're fighting with the fact that our physics engine is trying to update the transform as well. So we're going to move this in here. Now in this case, we do need to start using delta. So we're going to actually add delta in here, because now we are dependent on our frame rate. But unfortunately, that means that our factors are going to be way off, because our delta is already going to be a really small number. So we're probably going to have to go the other way and actually make these higher. All right. The other thing, do I want to? No. Let's start with that and see if my suspicion is right. See if I indeed. All right. Okay, come on. Yep. Whoa, this is very hard. Whoa, yeah. All right. The yaw is definitely way too strong. This is... Whoa. Well, you can see that I haven't played Fly Sims for a while. But yeah, I think that our inputs are too strong. So let's make them a bit lower. Let's see if I have some more control over it. Let's put them back to 1. Might actually even make our yaw way less, like that. Oh, that's much more controllable now. All right. So yeah, this is like playing asteroids, because with asteroids also you've got direct, you know, basically there's no drag whatsoever. So I'm flying backwards now and just throttling up, trying to slow down until we slow down, and then we go back up where we came from. And of course, the only thing that we have that, so even though I do this, I'm going to hit the aircraft carrier because I'm not stopping. So here is then a question, because when you play a game like Elite Dangerous or even the original Elite, they do this, right? The whole idea there was to have a as physics realistic as possible an experience, but it makes things unplayable. The other option that we have is that we make it more as if we're flying in air. So the way that a normal plane reacts. So obviously the first thing is drag, but the other thing that would be is once you make turns, your current velocity is adjusted to the new direction that you're taking. Now that's a little bit harder to do when you do a rigid body. That probably means that we need to start looking into integral forces. But because you have this thing, if you look at, do we have a rigid body in here? No, we don't. Let's see if it, so that's a custom integrator, I think. Yeah, so then you implement the integrate forces function, and in there we determine how our rigid body moves. So we override the default logic inside of Godot, which is right now purely, purely Newtonian. And because there's no forces whatsoever working on our plane, we put some thrust in, we're moving at a certain velocity forward. We can turn around, our ship will keep moving. That's why when I was heading towards the aircraft carrier or the space carrier, and I turned the nose down to try and miss it, I'm still heading towards it. My velocity heading towards the carrier doesn't change. I have to turn all the way around and apply a force in the opposite direction for me to fly away from the carrier. While if you're flying a plane inside of an atmosphere, the drag on the wings will redirect your craft in a different direction. Now, one thing that we could do is we could simulate that drag. Let's have a look. So for that, we store the position of our previous frame. We go back in here, we already have that applied. So let's go apply drag. So here, apply throttle. Get our delta. So we get our new origin. Take away our last position. And we update our last position with our new position. All right, so now we know with our delta position, we know how fast we're moving and in which direction we're moving. Multiple thrusters around the ship. Yeah, that's basically how we do the yaw and stuff. The only thing that I haven't made, right now when you put joystick input, you immediately go that fast, as if you got an immediate impulse. And that's something that we need to change. All right. So let's say that we only apply this if we're actually moving. I'm not sure that's really needed, but we will anyway. So we're going to apply a central impulse in the opposite direction of that we're moving, and we're going to multiply that with a drag factor, because else factor. Else we're going to go and slow down really fast. But let's give that something relatively big, I think. So yeah, we see that we're slowing down. I actually want it to slow down a bit faster. Let's see what happens there. So we are slowing down. All right. Let's see what that does. Okay, that's all right. We screwed something up. All right. Just in case, let's do this the other way around. I don't think that matters. So the faster we're moving, the more drag we apply in the opposite direction. Okay, let's actually go put this back to 1 because maybe. Oh, there we go. Good thing that I implemented a button. There we go. It's definitely working. All right, something weird going on with the frame rate. Let's around. We're definitely slowing down very slowly. But I'm having the feeling that the thrust isn't actually applying in the right direction. So let's say if we, now it seems to be working. This is fun, actually. Okay, so why is that quick speed up happening? That doesn't make any sense. See that? It suddenly speeds up a little bit when we go past the ship. Here, I let go of my controls and we speed up again. Maybe that's just because I'm turning. Yeah, it's whenever I do joystick input, it seems that it just slows down. That's so strange. Okay. I am starting to wonder if we're doing something in a way that we shouldn't be. Because that was the reason that I moved all the code into process. Because I was thinking that when we assign the basis here, that would somehow undo what our physics engine is doing to our object. Because it just looks that when we are applying our rotation, I'm wondering if we should have a... I wonder if we need a gimbal for this to work. It's worth a try. It's worth a try. Well, let's just do it and see what happens. Maybe that will solve our problem. So that does mean I need to take that out of there for just a sec, or else I'm going to get in trouble with that. We're going to go and add a new spatial here. That does mean that my collision shape will need to be okay. Well, if that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. So I'm going to call that gimbal. And we're going to go move our cockpit there and our head position there. And then I'm going to make another remote transform. Okay, hold on. I need to put okay, that's updated right away. That means that we need to go and move that. There we go. There we go. So obviously we're going to rotate our cockpit around that gimbal point. We need to make sure that our collision shape stays there as well. So we're actually not going to be rotating our rigid body. We're going to be rotating our gimbal, but we are going to be applying our rotated direction vectors when we do our impulse, so that our thrust is still going to be in the correct direction. But what I just want to try and see is if we move our rotation outside of affecting our rigid body directly, whether that makes our hiccups go away. So now what we need to do is change that to gimbal global transform, and we change that to, that doesn't matter that we're using the local transform in this case, because we're still rotating around the same axes, I think. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. As far as I'm aware. So to that gimbal, that gimbal, that gimbal, okay. And oh, it took a minute. We gotta move that back into there. But that also means that this now needs to have gimbal in it. We definitely need to make that a function on our thing, I think. I think we need to put that player position actually inside of our interceptor. And I think that is a call that we're going to be making to our player or our interceptor node. And I think that's probably a better idea. Okay. Or cleaner anyway. Well, let's first see if this actually works. If this makes a difference. The other thing I keep forgetting is to make this full screen. I probably need to make that a... Alright, should work on that as well. Okay. Oh, that is much better. Okay, let's see if we hit it. Whoa, we're tumbling. Okay, now this is an interesting problem. Okay. Those look very cool. All right. So, the reason why, well, obviously I'm not very good at correcting spinning, but even the best that I could do, I would never have stopped it, because now we're spinning our interceptor and we're trying to adjust with our gimbal. That means that we are actually never stopping our radial force. So I think our gimbal approach was actually wrong. I think we need to have a look at, is there a way to apply a rotational force to this thing? Okay, I think we need to start playing around with apply torque impulse. So we're going to undo the gimbal thing that we did, and as we're doing that, we're actually going to change the way this works as well. So we're going to get rid of that. Save. We're going to go and put our cockpit back where it was. We are going to put our head position back. There we go. I want the collision shape to be at the end. I'm going to move my... No, I'm going to delete that guy. And we're going to change the type of this guy to remote transform. There we go. So now everything is... almost everything is back to the way that it was. However, and we really need to make a base class out of this so that we have our head position as a transfer in that. I actually don't care about you. And we're going to create a function here, and that's going to be called set remote path player path. New path, which needs to be a... Sorry, my keyboard is a little broken, so that's why I have the external one. So here we're simply going to say head position dot remote path is new path. There we go. And that means that now in our start scene, instead of doing this, we're going to do this. And that means that if we change the intercept or the plane that we're using, which eventually we'll do, we just call that set player path and it will set the right remote transform, and that will work. Okay. So, but now we're back to having our original problem with this. So obviously that needs to become just a normal global transform. All right. We are not going to care about this anymore. We are not going to be caring about that anymore. I'm going to be ignoring the errors for a sec. Get rid of all that. I'm actually going to start by taking these all out. And that just becomes an example. Now I've never used this one, so let's just see what happens when we just apply the roll directly. Let's see. So this was axis 1, which was left, right. Oh, set player path. Okay. Player. Set player path. Did we not save something? That's right. Oh yeah, we do need our original actually seeing we only, no, we do want it global trend. This time I do want it as a global transform. bases. There we go. So there we got our orientation. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So that actually works exactly as I would have expected. That's pretty cool. So we are going to move this back into our physics because that's where it makes the most sense. Boom. Roll factor. So this case we're not gonna apply delta because delta is fixed. Or actually, why not? That way it is going to be more ready to be handled in the, you know, if we ever update our physics process value. Okay. Oh, this is really cool because now we got our automatic. All right. So obviously our plane isn't standing on the ground, or else it would stop rolling around. That's fine. Let's see. I want my roll factor to be a little bit more. I'm going to make that 2. And I'm going to make that 1. Okay. Let's go. There we go. See if our pitch wants to work now. It does. Okay, our roll is working pretty well. But our pitch is, first of all, going the wrong way. Which makes sense because last time we had to invert it as well. But it's also going way slower, and that's really weird. It could be because our collision shape is very long. Maybe it takes that into account. I'm not sure. So that goes fine, but that does not. Now the other thing is, we really want to have, oh yeah, we can't go up further than this, or by much. Alright, eventually works. We just scraped the bottom of our collision shape over the ground, which was really interesting. Now the other thing, of course, is we don't have any, actually that's something that I probably can handle here. Angular, damp, okay. Probably could have used our linear damp. Let's actually do that. Let's do that. I'm just going to disable that for now because I think actually our linear damp will do that for us. We're turning really slow, so I just need to adjust our we stop churning if I let go? I don't think so. Okay. Let's up that a little bit, see what happens. But also let's go and make that a bit more, and also let's make our yaw work. All right. Alright, that works really well. But I still get very little input from that. And the same from that. So that's really strange. Oops. That's really strange. And again, the suspicion that I have is because we've made our collision shape all this length. I think that is being taken into account when we're turning. Let's see if I'm right about that. Okay, are we applying the right one? Okay, we're gonna go and make this small. I just want to see if my suspicions are correct. Yeah, look at that. Okay. So the longer our... Well, that's the other question, is if I keep it centered. So let's make you 0, and let's go, well, let's actually go and do it like this. Okay, that was logical because now we had that thing. Wow, I'm gonna hit the top. I'm gonna hit the top. No, we're not gonna hit the top. Okay, so boink. Okay, that's fun. Oh. All right. So the size of our collision shape is going to directly affect. I'm just going to leave it as that small for now. And that means we can put this lower again. And that one lower. So the size of our collision shape somehow affects how quickly we can rotate our craft when we're using our applied torque. Now that does mean, of course, that as our if our collision shape being longer means that we need to exert more force, then we just need to add the or up the factor more, I guess. It's not much more that we can do about that. All right. I think I need to improve my linear damp as well. Come on. There we go. All right. So let's see if I can actually fly this thing. I think the damp can be a bit higher. Because if I turn it around and let go, it takes a while before it smooths out. Oh. Boom. Well, okay, I'm getting really dizzy now, but I wanted to see if this actually... Yeah. It's not too bad, actually. That was actually a lot of fun. All right, so we have the workings of a flying spaceship. I think there's a lot of tweaking to be done before this thing feels much more natural to fly. But it is flying. I can actually control it pretty naturally. And it is, well, I'm playing asteroids right now. Because I'm giving it a constant force. I'm a little bummed out that our... This is a lot of fun. Once you get a hang of it, it's very controllable. Now, of course, we mentioned motion sickness before. And the funny thing was, which really surprised me, was that a friend of mine who played the Rogue One X-Wing game on the PlayStation, which is one of my favorite things to play, he got really sick playing that. And I've never seen someone get that sick that fast playing a VR game. Now, I think I'm gonna hit this. Yes, I am. Wow. Oh, I'm inside. Oh yeah, that's right, because I didn't put collision shapes on the side. That's right. So obviously he did get sick of that, and that was a bit weird, because except for what just happened when you hit a ship and you suddenly start tumbling around, you know, even if you were being something real, you probably get sick. But for that normal flying, because you're inside of a cockpit and you constantly have the cockpit as your reference, that for a lot of people that combats the nauseating effects of, you know, the spaceship moving while you're sitting still in your chair. And when you're flying around that smoothly, as I was sort of rotating around that ship, just constantly giving throttle, and like I said, basically playing asteroids but in 3D, it's actually a very smooth experience, because you have your cockpit as your reference, and then you have the capital ship outside, the carrier, as your reference, and yeah, that's a lot of fun. And that's one of my my things when you look at these type of games, these flight sims and space sims, why I actually believe that those are the type of games that if you once you play them in VR, you know, you play the Rogue One X-Wing missions, or you know, you play Elite Valkyrie, or not, what's it called, Eve Valkyrie, which was, I loved the demo. I hated the game because I actually don't like the multiplayer aspect of it, and I really missed having a strong campaign in there. But the X-Wing Rogue One game was actually one of my favorite experiences on PlayStation VR, because when you then go back to your desktop game of that type, you go back to X-Wing versus TIE Fighter or something like that, the fact that you can't move your head around, you know, in the X-Wing game, in the Rogue One game, you had a TIE Fighter coming from the side. You could look and you could track where the TIE Fighter was going, and you could reorientate the ship around where you were looking until you had the guy in your sights. You can't do that on desktop, especially that fast moving, because those TIE Fighters are fast in that game. You just lose track of where they are. It's really hard to follow them. But if you can look around, you can spot them real quickly. So it is past midnight for me. So I'm going to start rounding off. See if there is see you in the chat if there's anything more. Yeah, SLX, motion sickness is a problem in VR. So like I said, I had a friend of mine being floored by the X-Wing game, which I'm still, the only game I've had motion sickness with was the original Minecraft beta, and that was because that was in the early days of VR, and nobody had figured out yet that if you're in an FPS environment and you are rotating a character without you actually rotating yourself, that floors everybody. Everybody gets sick on that one, which is why you have the stepped rotation, or, you know, Vive doing the right thing, full room scale, so you don't have to turn the player around. The player can turn himself around in physical space. I don't know what type of VR you've tried. Friends of mine who have always been very subject to motion sickness, who are now playing on, say, an Oculus Quest, and playing games like Beat Saber or Box VR, or even something like Space Pirate Chainer, because your character is not being moved by the game. You are actually standing in that game, you know, on a platform or on a space, and there's things coming towards you, but your movements are directly translated in game, they tend to not have much problems with motion sickness. It's when they start doing a driving simulator or a flight sim, or they try and do an FPS where you can do direct movement or teleport movement, and some people can take it, some people can't. I'm not sure if you can get over it. I'm lucky enough that I don't have that problem. But don't be, again, not knowing what you have tried. Try again, especially with the newer hardware, especially with the newer games. If you've tried VR on, let's say, a Gear VR, mobile phones, that's not a good experience. And that is not, that's not comparable to running like an index on a very fast machine. This thing is running at 90 frames per second. I think you can get up to 120 frames per second if you have the right hardware for it. That's an entirely different experience than using a Samsung phone or running them in Android phone and running at 60 FPS or even 70 FPS. And actually hitting that, right? Because a lot of mobile games actually don't hit that. They'll be rendering at 30 FPS and you get something that tries to get, your time warp trying to get your in-between frames. That's a ticket to motion sickness. So yeah, unless there's more questions coming in chat, I think I'm going to round off. So we've now got a thing that flies around. There's a lot of stuff missing, but it's a start, right? So I'm going to try and figure out why my throttle doesn't come through, whether that's coming through on a joystick port that's not supported or something like that. Maybe just something driver-wise. Don't know. Need to figure it out. A little bit bummed out by that because that's really what I wanted. Although maybe that's a good excuse to get a separate throttle. I'm gonna have a look at that, but I might do some more sessions on this. I will be working on my tutorial video the rest of the weekend. Hopefully I'll have it ready Sunday or Monday. It's nearly done, so it should be good. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing everybody's reactions there, because it's been a lot of work the last 2-3 weeks putting that together, and I think it's a good start and a good next step in the whole Weapon VR tutorial series. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I might continue this. I'm going to see if Friday night is a good enough time that I can actually do this on a fixed basis. It's the one day where I don't have anything Saturday morning. So see if that's your time. Let me know in the comments if this is a good time for you guys as well, or I don't know how many people are just still other parts of the world starting your Friday morning, so that might not work. I don't know. But it seems for me to be a night that I generally have available. So I might just continue on this next week and see if we can actually get something more happening with a little space game, and maybe do like an initial you get launched out of the aircraft carrier or something like that. Because actually maneuvering around in the carrier, especially in what's still effectively 0G, yeah, don't think anybody's ever going to be very happy. I remember even with a game like Elite Dangerous that takes physics really serious, there's quite a bit of help involved from the game for you to maneuver around inside of space stations and things like that. But outside, it all becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot more fun, especially if we have our throttle working properly. And then we need to start looking at getting some things to shoot at. I'm thinking about throwing an asteroid field in there or something. I want to do something with the background as well. There's some really cool tools out there for generating backgrounds for space games, but they all create skyboxes. And of course, Godot is using a panoramic. So taking one of those things apart and re-implementing that in Godot, that might be a really interesting thing. And then actually have it generating a a panoramic out of that, which is then used as our skybox or our sky sphere. Could be fun. Well, let me know in the comments. What do you guys think? What should be the next step in this? Should I keep working on this? Should I, what sort of ideas can we come up with to actually make this into something fun? I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Yeah, have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you in chat. All right. Thank you all.